What we have now is more intense competition. Brands from many different cultures are kind of invading markets around the world. How do we connect with consumers? By humanizing brands. Once we succeed at that, which other markets should be going after so we don't have to make many changes to the human image that we have created? And if we want to go to a market in which we have to introduce changes, you know, are these changes going to be a problem, or are these changes something that we can manage? When we want to analyze humans across the cultural spectrum, then values provide a very useful tool to answer the questions. The dimensions that Schwartz uses replicate in the branding domain. These values are arranged in what is called a structural circle, in which some values are closer to each other, meaning that they are more compatible to one another, and some values are less close to each other, meaning that they are less compatible with one another. The one here, openness and self-enhancement, are more related to individual concerns. From a collective perspective, we care about self-transcendence, or this notion of taking care of those around us. That's also important to us. And conservation is pretty much maintaining society the way it is. There are two dimensions that are very powerful to identify these underlying reasons. One is the distinction between individualism and collectivism. The other distinction that can be added to the individualism collectivism, in which we talk about vertical and horizontal societies. When we combine these two things, what we get is 4 cultural orientations, or 4 cultural types, in which we can try to put societies to see if they fit that mold. We have the 2 vertical versions of either individualism or collectivism, and the 2 horizontal versions of individualism and collectivism. In vertical individualism, but people value competition and winning out over others. Status and power is the important thing. Horizontal individualism is all about being unique and distinct, appearing as self-reliant. Horizontal collectivism is this notion of interdependence, sociability, concerns for others. Vertical collectivism, the notion of integrity of the in-group, respect for tradition, and socially established roles. We can easily map these orientations with the 4 brand concepts that we just discussed. We tested this notion in a large survey with 1,500 consumers in 6 different countries, individualistic and collectivistic countries. And what we did in these studies is we show people, we asked them to evaluate brands with the different 4 brand concepts. We have pretty solid evidence that across markets and across cultures, the extent to which people endorse a certain cultural orientation predict their liking for certain brand concepts. And now that I've been successful with this, building this human brand, where do I take it? The value representation also suggests that some values are closer to each other and some values are more difficult to pursue concurrently. Values that are close to each other, for instance, openness and self-enhancement, are things that can be pursued concurrently. So for instance, you can take a brand like Rolex that is all about self-enhancement, and you can promote it using an openness message. Same thing happens with self-transcendence and conservation. Same thing can happen with openness and self-transcendence, although they serve different interests, individual and collective. So you could have, for instance, Coca-Cola, an openness brand, promoting that it cares for the communities where it operates. Same thing with conservation and self-enhancement. What it's a little bit more complicated is when you want to combine things that are opposing to each other in the motivational continuum. So if you want to combine self-transcendence and self-enhancement, this creates what we call disfluency. This creates a discomfort. So then you have, for instance, Rolex promoting social justice. Similarly, you know, if you have a conservation brand trying to promote an openness message, same thing, you get a pushback. You know, we again collected a large survey, 1,500 consumers in 4 different countries. And what we did with these consumers is we showed them different slogans for brands that we knew were either openness, self-enhancement, tradition, or self-transcendent brands. And we asked them to rank those slogans from, you know, the best to the worst. The congruent slogan is the one that people like the most. That's not very surprising. But what is interesting is that the incongruent slogan is consistently ranked at the bottom. So the openness slogan for a conservation brand is the lowest score. Cultures that are closer to each other because they are either horizontal cultures, vertical cultures, individualistic cultures, or collectivistic cultures are more compatible to each other. But when I want to go with cultures that are less compatible, you know, the ones that are at the opposing ends here, horizontal individualistic cultures or vertical collectivistic, vertical individualistic and horizontal collectivistic, that they don't share neither horizontal nor vertical nor individualistic nor collectivistic, then I need to do drastic changes to the brand concept to make it appealing. And these drastic changes might not suit well with consumers.